So I removed myself from that room and I walked down the hall. I walked outside and I did sort of the idea, are you in or are you out again? Because clearly I'd started putting myself out. And I'm like, okay, I'm in.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan. Wow. Episode 200. This is really cool and exciting. I didn't think I'd get up to 10, let alone have all of you listen to the pod. But here we are. I'm super grateful to you all for listening to these chats, those who send in questions and comment on my posts. Funny in Failure on Instagram, get around it, shameless plug. And of course, my guests who come to the table with absolute grace, class, and integrity. It's really inspiring and brave of my guests to chat with such open hearts and have deep and meaningful chats with me. So thank you to everyone for making this pipe dream become a reality. Okay, so back to the pod. Today's guest is a champion. I was blown away, mesmerized, and empowered. Patrick came up with the goods. He's a wealth of knowledge, humble, and genuinely wants to inspire others. To hear about Patrick's view on life and how he's managed to work for over 30 years despite the highs and lows was simply brilliant. I love him, you'll love him, he's all about peace and love. Okay, I'm getting excited, so let's just get into it and I'll let the conversation do all the talking. Patrick Fabian is an award-winning actor who you may recognize from his iconic role as Howard Hamlin in Better Call Saul. He has a ridiculous amount of credits and has almost hit the 200 mark. He's guest starred on almost everything: Friends, NCIS, Will and Grace, Hot in Cleveland, Star Trek Voyager, Lucifer, Code Black, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, Grimm, Scorpion, The Newsroom, all of the CSIs, The Mentalist, Desperate Housewives, Xena the Warrior Princess, Criminal Minds, Bones, Private Practice, Burn Notice, According to Jim, Drop Dead Diva. The list goes on, so check them out in the episode notes. He's also had reoccurring roles on Big Love, Veronica Mars, Joan of Arcadia, Providence, 24, Time of Your Life, General Hospital, Working Class, Dharma and Greg, and The Education of Max Bickford. Patrick is also fondly remembered as Professor Lasky from Saved by the Bell, The College Years. Patrick was also the male lead in The Last Exorcism. Fans loved his portrayal of the flawed Rev Cotton Marcus, and he was even awarded Best Actor at the prestigious Steiger's Catalonian International Film Festival in 2010. Some of his other films include Jimmy, Must Love Dogs, Tales of Everyday Magic, Badass, Atlas Shrugged, Pig, My Greatest Teacher, The Good Mother, Underdogs, Badass, and My 11th. On Disney and the ABC Family channels, Patrick has been the go-to bad guy, playing the evil Thanos in Disney Channel's Twitches and Twitches 2, and the only man hunting reindeer in the Christmas movies Snow and Snow 2, Brain Freeze, and Cloud 9. On stage, Patrick has also worked with some of the best playwrights and directors around, having toured all around America. He also voices Harvey Dent in Batman, The Doom That Came to Gotham, which is coming out soon. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, such as why he loves cameo, the highs and lows of a 30-plus year career, disappointments, no's and rejections, his gratitude mindset, Better Call Saul, and enjoyment, plus a lot more. Before we get into this chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I find it adds a new element and dynamic to these chats. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny and Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out every Monday at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, with the video to follow the following day. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's epic episode. I also saw you're on Cameo. I would imagine, do you get like weird requests from people on that? Because you
On
maybe they get,
Cameo?
yeah.
Yeah, I was reluctant to get on Cameo for, honestly, I can't even remember why.
Mm.
Preciousness, ego, or nonsense, really, in the end. And my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner, because it's been a real direct way to connect with people. And it's that weird thing of like you're on television and you're in people's living rooms and they've seen you over the years in different iterations, or you do a particular role and all of a sudden somebody is either touched, moved by the work, which by the way is the point of it all. The whole point of it is to touch somebody, whether it's thin material or deep material, whether you make them laugh, make them cry, or make them pause and consider their existence. That's sort of the job. It's what I got it in for storytelling. And to hear the response directly from people from Cameo about like why such and such makes their mother happy or makes their sister or somebody who's going through a hard time. I get a lot of people who just want to hear a pep talk.
Really?
They just said, we want a pep talk. I'm having, and they will be very confessional. It's that weird anonymity that the internet sometimes, that's a two-edged sword without a doubt. But there's a freedom in knowing that they don't know me, but they kind of know me. Or at least they know me through a character and they want to reach out and say, I know you like this, and I get a sense that maybe you could help me with this thing. Now, I'm not a qualified therapist or any of that sort of thing, but I've lived a life and I've been around the block. And so there was a couple of things I can talk to, and I always speak to it from my own truth and my own sense of what this and that. And I found that to be really rewarding, because then I get responses from people after I do this thing. And I play piano on Cameo. I sing Happy Birthday and play piano, and that's fun. And I did Christmas carols this year as well. And it was, it's brought me a lot of joy. I have to tell you, it's really good. It's been really fun. And it sort of happens, it comes in spurts. All of a sudden there'll be a rash of people wanting to hear from Howard Hamlin or Thantos from Twitches or Nurse Dan from Friends. And then I'll get people who just literally like, would you please give me a pep talk? I'm lost. Or I don't know what's going on. I'm scared of my new job and stuff like that. And being somebody who's spent his career being lost and scared about not ever getting a job again, those are things I am qualified to speak about, at least that anxiety, and then sort of the things that I do to sort of work my way through it. So,
okay. That's amazing. There's so much there. I'm just kind of, isn't it awesome to know that people are reaching out to you, not only for a character that you've inspired them and their family, but also that they feel that they can trust you to a degree to provide them with like a motivational speech. To me, that's mind blowing. I've never heard that before on Cameo.
Yeah. Well, I think, I don't know. The whole notion of social media and who you present yourself to be and stuff like that, I try and stay as authentic to the bone as I can.
Nice.
I do a lot of hiking. I do a lot of, isn't the world a wonderful place? Aren't I lucky? Hashtag I'm fucking lucky, because I am.
Yep.
But the world and writ large, or the outdoors, is there for all to partake of. And the simple things of being able to fall in love, hold hands, and have dinner and stuff, those are universal truths, and the fact that these phones and these communicators that are used so often for evil and whatnot, and misrepresented for lies, misrepresentation, and misinformation that really does not service humanity, written small or large, to have something to be so direct, somebody who would never have access. From people all over the world, people who are never going to get out of like Nepal, who aren't going to go swimming in Malibu or ever find themselves on a television set, most likely. To have somebody be able to reach that. And I love to show people where I'm at. I was just doing a film up in Portland, Oregon, that I'd never really been there before. And I had some downtime and I got to go hiking up there. Wet, rainy, gorgeous Pacific Northwest. These waterfalls are stunning. So I found myself spending one of my off days doing about 20 cameos at the spot where I thought most people who I was doing these cameos for will never set foot there. So I would sit there and have the woods as my background, and I'd do a shtick and a little song and dance as Howard Hamlin or whatnot. And then we talk a little bit more, and then I'd sort of address the thing that they wanted, and then I'd sing them happy birthday, and then I'd show them like Silver Falls, which are like these, 1,000-year-old waterfalls that have been churning ever since the dawn of time. And then, we'd look at it together and sort of meditate on it. And then I'd say happy birthday. And it felt like I was giving them something more than just me chattering on and nattering on. And I would get responses from people like, wow, I'm never going to get there. Or, wow, hey, guess what? I'm in a wheelchair and I live in poverty. I'm never going to, people scrape money together to buy those things. So it is crazy. I like the connection though. I like the one-to-one. I am not one of those performers or actors, and I got no judgment about those who are. When people want to come up and say, hey, I saw you, I know who you are, I've seen your work, I try to take time to say thank you because, I put myself out there in the public eye, and literally those people watching, I tell people on the cameos all the time, thanks for watching the show, because television works like this. If they make TV and people watch it, they make more. But if they make TV and nobody watches it, whew, they get rid of it. And
game over, yeah.
that has been most of my career. So, I don't mind. I like being on TV.
Same. I want to be on TV as well. I've only been on for a few seconds, and it's catchy. But you're
that's very understated. It's catchy. Yes, it is catchy. I would say with a capital C.
Yeah. You're a very rare breed of human, because there's a few things here, and we'll dive into it. A lot of people in Cameo, no judgment. It's purely a money-making thing. And obviously people need to make money, and that's an avenue to make money. And I think it's a great platform in that sense. But you seem to go one step ahead and actually provide a bit of yourself. You mentioned authenticity, love, connection. That is very rare, especially on a platform like that. You could just be like, oh, I've got 20 today, I'm going to do it in my room, get them over and churn it out. You actually wanted to show an aspect or yourself, and you wanted to give back. That is very rare. I want to know, how do we get there? Because the journey of, let's say, love, connection, collaboration to a higher degree, through my experience in my life and all of the people I've had on the podcast, that comes over a long journey of struggles or challenges. But yeah, I'm just kind of mind blown that everything is all about like love and connection, empowerment.
Well, we'll give a tip of the hat to Tom and Mary Lou Fabian from Central Pennsylvania, who raised me. And, you are the product of where you're from and who raises you. And my parents have been married 65 years. Dad turns 90 this year. My mom's 85. And the reason they're so old and still, they were just swimming this morning. They swim every day in the retirement village where they live. Yeah. And nice. I would suggest this because my parents, first of all, are certainly the people who have only done things in moderation. And second of all, I don't know two more decent people when it comes to a moral compass. The notion of them lying or doing the wrong thing, or, and this is very Pennsylvanian of them, putting themselves first. It's just it's an alien thought to them. They're also of a generation of that as well. So anything that sort of comes out of that, I would definitely say is because of, where I come from, in spite of myself in that respect. But to your point, I'm 58, and I was reluctant to even say that for a second because, what's that mean? It means nothing. It means I actually am, I'm still alive, which is really great. And I've been in the business for over 30 years, thankfully making a living in something that is not, this business is not sentimental. Yep. And it is not necessarily for anybody who's the most talented. You have to have, like in life, no matter what you're doing, a little bit of luck, a little bit of hard work, a little bit of right time, right place sort of thing. And, but in this business in particular, it's been 30 years of hearing, no, you're not it. Nope, you're not it. Nope, we're going to make that person that, and they're going to become rich and famous. And then you get to go ahead and watch it. They'll be on the cover of Rolling Stone in a week, and you're going to be in line.
Yeah.
So you quickly, Tom Petty has a song that talks about alligator skin. And you kind of have to have it in any sort of entertainment business, because the majority of the time, it's not you. It's not you. It's the other guy or the other girl. And, it's hurt when I've lost jobs that I think I should have gotten. But then on the flip side, I've certainly gotten jobs that I was, I didn't deserve in my mind. Like I didn't do good work or whatever. Oh yeah, absolutely. Certainly things I've gone in and sort of maybe tossed off or wasn't quite prepared for or didn't think I knew what I was doing. And I would get those jobs. And then other jobs that I would go in for that I was like, I had worked and slaved on and I would go in and you would get close and for whatever reason you wouldn't get the job. And the entirety of the career, from my opinion, is just my opinion, is that in a nutshell. You don't know if you're the answer across the table when you walk in. Sometimes you're the answer just because you walked in and they go, oh yeah, that's how I thought it looked like. Oh, he opens his mouth, he speaks. All right, that's good. Let's hire him. And other times you lay your heart out on the line to show them what a human being and how deep you are as an artist. And you've walked in and they've already been like, yeah, he's not gonna work.
Isn't
but that's also about you're not right for every job. I'd like to use the example of Friends when that was first cast, because at the time I was the right age of all those people. And everybody who looked like me and looked like those friends, we all sort of got auditions. We all got to read it. I remember reading it. I remember reading the pilot of Friends thinking such an unimaginative title, right? And, what do you know? I'm 23 or 4. I don't know. And you just don't know. And you read it, you go in, you read it like you audition for everything else. And then, we didn't get the job. I didn't get the job. My friends didn't get the job, but those other guys got the job. And then they became the friends. And you can cut that two ways. You go like, oh, that could have been mine, or that should have been mine. And the reality is that had it been mine, maybe the chemistry between the friends would have been off. Maybe you would have ruined it, and it would have been just another pilot that sort of didn't get picked up. But instead, in that case, they cast that spot on. They wrote for it spot on. It was at the right place in the right time, and then they became them. And what are you going to do with that? Are you going to sit there and for the rest of your career go, I didn't get to be on the Friends? I mean, I did eventually on their 100th episode. So,
which is crazy.
But that's okay. I've had a wide and varied career, which has been really, really good. But the point is, if I stopped, all the disappointment and all the no's that come around, and anybody has this in any life, they do. The expectations that you set yourself up for, which lead to disappointment if they're not fulfilled exactly the way that you want them.
Yeah.
That means even getting a job that's not the way you want it, or something can also, your head can, I got 2 kids, 2 dogs. I've been sober for 17 years. And so my sense of what I'm entitled to and what I deserve, what's mine, is certainly been tempered with being around long enough to realize that I'm lucky to be here, 1, and 2, not everything works out exactly the way you think it's going to. Right?
Yep.
And that's hard in a business where you're constantly bombarded with what you ought to be, who you should be. Guess who's, hey, that person's them. That's who they are. See, that's what you should be. And you run and you chase and you hope and you go and you sit up and you drink green juice and you're still not Brad Pitt,
It blows my mind in that sense because, it's never healthy. And, you've obviously gone on a huge journey of self-discovery. But it just blows my mind in the sense that in this industry, we're told you need to be this person or this person. But through my experience, the people that thrive are being the most unique or being themselves. But it's an industry where you're constantly compared to other people, as you said. And sometimes when you're going for roles, you probably have a lot of people that look like you. And to me, that can be an absolute mind fuck because you know the goal is to be yourself, but then you also want to emulate. What do they want? What do they want? And you show a side of yourself. And to me, that can be a dangerous game with, 1, the ego, but also a sense of self. So I'm wondering how you kind of combated that or understood it so it hasn't become as damaging.
Well, it certainly was damaging in a lot of ways, because then you start thinking like, oh, I need to go to the gym more. Maybe I should get my teeth whitened. Or, look, boys go through all the stupid things that girls do, not as awfully. Yep. It's still a much worse business for women, without a doubt.
Yep.
But to your point, I would walk into a room and there would be 20 of me.
Yeah, crazy.
Some of them a little bit younger, some a little bit older. Some of them I would recognize that had been on TV. Some of them had Emmys. Some of them I didn't know. And, when I first started off in the business, I would, you walk in, you're like, who are these guys? You wouldn't talk to anybody, And then eventually you'd walk into the room, you'd be like, oh, they brought in Scott. Scott's terrible. Whatever you're thinking in your brain, right?
Yeah.
But then Scott would get a job, or somebody else would get a job, and you'd be like, oh, maybe I should be more like Scott, or whatever that is. And then if you stick around long, and if you walk in and you're like, oh, good, Larry's in the room. Hey, Larry, how you doing? And then you start showing pictures of your kids because you're just glad that he called into the room. Nice. And at that point, because we didn't become Brad Pitt, everybody wanted to be Brad Pitt or George Clooney, but those roles were taken. they were being played by Brad Pitt and George Clooney, and they're still being played by them, and they're doing it very well, good job. You know what I'm saying? And so at some point you look around and you realize, oh, I'm not a movie star. I didn't become this thing, but I'm a working actor, which is actually what the dream we all said we all said we wanted to be working actors, but of course the dirty secret is we all wanted to be rich and famous. But that's just me. That's just me. Yeah. And then you find yourself looking around going like, oh, I've seen Larry for 20 years now. It's good to see that he's here because we're still in the game. And the game is still, you don't know what's going to happen. And that leads really to like, after working and bouncing around and, a perusal of my credits will quickly show you that one, I'm not picky. And two, I've worked a lot, and a lot of the stuff is, less than sort of forgettable. It comes and goes. It's a little disposable. Not everything you're going to do is going to resonate or hit or be good. It's just not. And then eventually, overnight success, I get, a show called Better Call Saul about 25 years into it. And I was the answer that time. I walked into the room and I was in the ballpark. And then I opened my mouth and I was still in the ballpark. And then eventually the answer to, for them, who is this Howard Hamlin guy, ended up being me, which was great because that answer has happened on a number of roles all the way around, from Murder, She Wrote to Xena to Star Trek, on a weekly basis, but never something large. I'd shot 13 pilots. I'd been cast as a series regular 13 times for pilots that we shot that never got picked up. I've been recurring on some shows and stuff like that. So, I'm a known quantity in that respect. I know how to do a job. I know how to audition. I know how to, I'm very serviceable. But I did not become somebody who was changing art as we knew it, changing acting as we knew it. And to your point, at some point, I was like, oh, you have to have a bit of self-awareness of like, what am I? Yeah. I'm probably not going to be cast as the plumber or the working man, right? Look at these hands, right?
They're beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. They're beautiful. But if you want somebody who to be a professor or the chief of surgery or a lawyer, then all of a sudden my skill set rises to the top and gives me a fighting chance for stuff like that. In the end, I'm a potato and potato chip land. What flavor do you need me to be in this respect? And some people got lucky and had defining roles that all of a sudden vaulted them into a place where choices became more varied. They got to be surrounded by better craftsmen and women who, and they become who they're supposed to become. But I've long since given up trying to, well, that's a lie. Of course, I'm always constantly comparing to myself, but I'm much better at being okay with the fact that I'm just me and what I have. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
nice.
Look, I'm not Mr. Zen, but I'm also like, life is short. What am I going to do? Be pissed off because I didn't become a movie star? How ridiculous does that sound? I mean, I'm a shit kicker from Pennsylvania, and I got to come out to Los Angeles. I live in Southern California, and I've been able to work in television as an actor and movies and plays. I've been able to do exactly what I wanted to do with the majority of my day working for 30 years. Oh my God, I'm a king. Wildest expectations exceeded. But on any given day, I can drive down Sunset and see a billboard and go, why did I get that?
Yeah, I really have to. I admire your positivity, your gratitude, but seeing the bigger picture. Because when we start out in any industry, you mentioned when you were 23, and you're comparing yourself to other people, which we all do, and we still do, and you've obviously got a better relationship with it. It can be very hard to navigate kind of those lines of, I need to be that person, or I don't need to be that person. I know that you mentioned like Brad Pitt and George Clooney. But at that young age, we can, and it happens a lot, it can push us in a, let's say, negative direction, or a direction that's not quite right for us, and it can deter us. Or it can even, people leave the industry. Like you're in the tiny percent that, you've got close to 200 credits, you said 30 years. Not many people can do that or have that ability. But I'm just so curious of how you are able to kind of battle like the mind games in terms of the sense of self. Who do you need to be, and then deciding to be you, because that's a journey in itself as well.
It's hard to sometimes put my brain back in the mindset that I was at that time. First of all, I think there was a sense of like, literally, the next phone call might change things. which is true. By the way, every day you wake up, things might happen. An event in your life may happen. But literally, I would be like, well, the phone's going to ring. Next week, there'll be an audition that is something different, that will be the rest of my career. And the fact is, there is no one job or one thing that does it. It's a crooked line, right?
Yeah.
From where I sit now to look back about what everything happened. But along the way, saying yes, which was what I didn't have the foresight or the thought to craft in my brain who I am. Like, I should present myself like this. I'm only going to take roles like this. I'm going to be very calculated about how I'm going to forge my career. And there are people who do that and do it successfully. I don't think I had the attention span or the self-realization or the wherewithal or the agents maybe, or the work or the talent. I don't know.
We'll agree to disagree.
But what I did do is I was able to go ahead and say yes to projects, because you never know. I mean, the point being, like, my resume is filled with a lot of stuff that is, maybe not that good, but that's okay, because a lot of things aren't good. But the people who are doing it don't think it's not good. We're not getting together to do a not good thing. We're getting together for the potential, because we think there might be something here. And then you get together and you have the table read, and we all go in to put on a show. We're going to do this thing. And I like that. I like that communal thing. I love that whole idea of, like, what do we got here? I don't know, from the time that we read it, to the time that we sat and read it aloud, to the time we got it on its feet, to the time we got costumes, wardrobe, and cameras and whatnot. What do we have? What do we have? And now we're going to edit it down. And oh, that wasn't exactly what we thought it was. Well, why didn't that work? And then you can get into the whole idea of, like, there's so many things along the way that can undermine what you're trying to do to make it not work, that when you see stuff that works and really works, it's amazing. It's sublime. It's amazing anything really can get through like that. And so that struggle and that effort. So that's what when I see stuff too, and you go like, that's not hitting me. That's not working. That's not fitting. What is that? And I can look at through a lens of, am I being professionally jealous? Do I not like it because it's too many young people? Do I feel old? What's going on? Am I going to say, blah, blah, blah? Or am I not in the emotional space to grab this? Or, I think I can identify that as the script seems a little broken to me. Or I didn't like the direction of that. Or, I don't like that performer or the performance, So there's so many things that are personal in viewing it, because it's art. It is maybe small, but it's art. You're making stuff, and you're putting it out there, and then people are dissecting it, and they're either telling you they love it and it resonates, or it stinks and never do it again. But the sense of, like, who I am in it, there's always the potential for, like, this thing's going to be great, and I like that. That's been ever since high school, putting on musicals. Oh, this is exciting. This is fun. What are we doing?
Every single one? So that's the mentality for every gig?
Well, I think so. I think it has to be. Otherwise, if you go in, I've done a shitload of guest stars. And being a guest star is being a guest star. You are guesting on somebody else's show. You are not starring on it.
Yep.
And so therefore you need to go in. And so you go in with that, and you have this whole notion of I'm playing in your house. So what are your house rules? Now, you would think that would get boring, but each house has different rules and different sensations and different feelings. And sometimes the work that you do is really fun and good. Sometimes you are just there to set up the star, to make them laugh. Sometimes you're just there to do exposition, and maybe the exposition isn't written so well, but in each instance, there's something to be gained for it. And there's, on a very practical level, I'll tell you what's gained by it. You're meeting a new director. You're working with a new casting director. You've got some producers and other actors who are all watching you work. They're all experiencing what you bring to the table. And if you bring to the table a sense of self-entitlement, and I'm better than this, and blah, 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 that will be absolutely soaked in by people. And it's a hard enough business. And my thought is, people tend to want to work with people who have a pretty good attitude about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because also you have to recognize what you're doing, because sometimes you are not making art. Sometimes you are not curing cancer with your television show. You're just making a nice procedural so people can get out of their lives for an hour. And that's important too.
Yep.
So, know what you're a part of. I don't know. There's a bit of, be of good cheer and be excited, and don't be pissed off, because you're lucky to be there. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to drive through the gates of Sony and go for an audition. A privilege that somebody picked up the phone on your behalf to say, will you see Patrick today? And a privilege that somebody said, yeah, I'll see Patrick today. And so if you go in half-baked, half-cocked, or with an attitude of like, ugh, I don't know. How are you helping yourself? How are you serving yourself? How are you stacking the deck in your favor in a business that you need to stack the deck in your favor as often as possible?
See, that's really rare, and that's what I was getting at the start. You know, you're talking about gratitude and how you feel you're very lucky. That is also just, I don't even have the vocabulary to explain this because, you know, almost 200 credits, barely anyone in the world has been able to do that. For example, you've just done one of the biggest TV shows in recent memory, and to still have the attitude of you're not entitled. And that can kind of blow people's minds because, you know, I come from an accounting background and it's pretty much, you know, you climb a ladder. But you mentioned the crooked line. And, you know, you can be the star of this amazing show and then inverted commas, this isn't the correct way of saying this, start at the beginning or not start at the star of the show. And that can really impact one's sense of self and the ego. But you have this mentality, which is really rare. And you should be very proud of yourself where you just feel like you're very lucky to get the call or happy to go in the parking lot. That's not normal. You need to tell me your secrets. I love it.
I don't know if it's a secret. One, I like to work. That's my bottom line. I love to work because you never know what you're going to get. You never know who you're going to meet. And, you know, this director who's hiring you right now that you're doing a good job for is going to end up doing something somewhere else. You know, to your point, I got done working on Better Call Saul, and we had a great run and it was really wonderful. And the show was over and I wasn't working on it anymore. And it turns out, you know, I was thinking, oh, the town must be waiting for me to become available. And, you know,
I would think that.
Well, of course you would think that because you want to think that because you want to believe your own thing. And also, but there's mitigating factors that come into all of it though. One, you know, I started doing the show 6 years ago and the business has changed in 6 years. The world has changed in 6 years. And I don't know if you got the memo, but being a white guy over 50 isn't exactly the front of the line as much anymore. And that's okay too. That's a practical notion. All the things I mentioned it before, I would go into a room and I'd see 20 guys who look like me. Well, now the good news is that they've opened up that. So it's not 20 of me. It's like 5 of me. And there's 5 other people. Oh, yeah. So by the way, it's still 20 to 40 people that you're competing against again. But it's just a whole different landscape.
Yep.
And so there's one of that. And then 2, you know, I don't know. The business is also like, you know, what are you doing next? You know, what's the next thing in front of me? What ended up being in front of me? I did some guest stars on Kung Fu on the CW back in the fall. Had a blast. They shoot in Vancouver. I met a whole bunch of people I didn't know. And yes, indeed, there was Kung Fuing. And I got my ass handed to me by a bunch of young kids. And in the off time, I got to go hiking up in British Columbia. What a great gig. How fun was that? It was totally fun. And then I just got working on Magnum PI, which shoots in Hawaii. Well, who doesn't want to work in Hawaii? Sign me up. So I went over there, had a great time with some really nice people and a different kind of show and really fun. And in the end, I've been auditioning in my living room like everybody else on the planet's doing and, you know, waiting to see what comes around. It's always sort of a lottery as to like what's happening. You can get caught up though in watching the trade magazines telling you about the projects that are going forward with so-and-so. And you're like, I didn't read it. I didn't read for that. What's going on? Do people not like me anymore? I mean, all that is still, you know, still very much present. But the way for me to sort of counterbalance that is once again going like, well, you know, I probably was submitted for it. And I don't know the reasons on the other side. I've never known the reasons on the other side of the table why I didn't get it for the most part. And I used to try and track that down because maybe if I could figure it out, unless all of a sudden I felt like maybe I wasn't doing good work, in which case I would like to hear that from casting directors who are like, he's off his game or he seems ill prepared. Those are criticisms that I need to hear. Yep. Those are practical things I would like to know. But for the most part, chasing down to find out why the girl doesn't want to go out with you, what's that going to get you? It's not going to make her go out with you. And so
you never know. You keep on persisting. No, I'm just joking.
Well, you keep persisting to find out. It's like, I want to find out what's the problem with me. That's what I want to hear. And then as soon as you hear it, you go like, I thought so. Yeah, because I'm bad. I'm no good. Oh boy, that mental state leads you to bitterness, finger pointing.
But also, go on.
No, go.
No, I was just going to say within that, you know, you've auditioned probably thousands of times and you're getting no's way more than yeses. So there is that balance of getting feedback that can actually help you and not also getting feedback. I know you've been doing it for a long time, so you're way more confident in your craft. But I've always found it a weird system where sometimes you don't get feedback, and you could be missing out on 100 jobs and not really get a clear idea of why you didn't get it. I know we said at the start of the podcast, sometimes it can be you're just not the person. It might be your height, your hair color, your whatever. And so I've always found that a weird dynamic to kind of figure out when can you get the feedback. I'm feedback orientated, so I love it. So I'm wondering how you kind of navigated that side as well.
Well, you pick and choose, because what you don't want to do is clog up your agents and your managers or the casting directors with a bunch of phone conversations about why Patrick didn't get the job.
Yep.
Because imagine that being multiplied by everybody they've seen. They would never be able to move on and move forward. So you have to be judicious when you want to ask that. And that would be in times in my career where either there's been streaks where like, I'm just not booking. I'm not booking jobs. I'm not booking jobs that I probably should, in my mind, book.
Yep.
And sometimes I get feedback, and then we decide to make a call, see if you're talking to somebody, if you can just slide in and find out. Or there would be a specific thing of like a job that I really wanted, that I thought I was really right for, that I was passionate about, and then I wouldn't get it. And somebody maybe similar would get it. And that's when you go like, well, what's the minutia? What was the thing? And again, you're still ultimately drilling down to finding somebody who basically says like, I don't know, it wasn't him.
Yeah.
And all that takes is one person in the room. If it's the right person, the money person or the director or the producer or the network head, to walk in, and everybody can be there and be like, we think it's him, it's Patrick. And they go, huh, are we sure? And then everybody in the room goes, yeah, no, I'm not sure. Are you sure? I wasn't sure. No, I was not. Right?
Yeah, that's the honest journey right there.
And you'll never know it. But I have gotten feedback before from people. I've had casting directors who have made my career by having me into the rooms. They've been the gatekeepers of opportunity. Mm. I have had casting directors reach out before to be like, hey, he seemed off. Is everything okay with him? And
that's nice.
And that was welcome. It was also, shocking and horrifying and but they weren't wrong, because I'm not a saint. And, there's times where I was ill prepared. I would love to be able to apologize to all the casting directors who I went in, half cocked, thinking I could just wing it. Yeah. Oh, I can wing this. And you know what? Maybe you can. Or actually, that guy can. That guy can wing it. This guy can't. This guy has to be prepared.
That's so interesting. 1,000 different questions popped into. Oh, yes, actually, something you said earlier of how this always blows my mind, of how to stay grounded and present, because as an actor, we're always wondering, when's the phone going to ring? And so to be able, you're hoping you wake up to your phone or your laptop or computer, whatever, with all of these different opportunities. So how have you been able to manage that? Because there's at some level where you don't know tomorrow that it can change your life or change your week or change your day or your month. And then you still have the rest of your day and your weeks and your months. How do you navigate that? Staying grounded and present in yourself?
Well, time management is a tough thing when you have, I used to talk about, in my 20s, it felt like all I did was go to lunch. Where are we going to have lunch today? Which is ridiculous. Perfectly capable, work-capable men in groups of fours passing each other on the golf course on a Wednesday. Hey, how you doing? And so, by the way, some of the best looking men you've ever seen in your life in Los Angeles golfing in the middle of the day.
I'm sure.
And we giggle and laugh, but that was sort of that's our job. Go to the gym, be available. What's coming up? And I've been blessed with good representation and people who have given me opportunities pretty much on a steady stream. So there's always been something. A couple of days go by and then an opportunity comes up. That's changed as I've gotten older and things have gone on, because I'm in a different category.
Yep.
I'm an older guy, and guess what? television and the movies are very much about, the young and the pretty and the problems with falling in love and falling out of love. And, I'm sliding into a different category. And so opportunities are different. And I tell you what, having a wife and kids has made me a better auditioner, I think. And that's because I don't have time to sit around and over focus about me and how I'm doing. But I do have time to work. I do know how to audition. That's the one skill I've definitely come up with over all these years. I know how to audition. And the real thing, if you want to back that up, is so an opportunity presents itself. Somebody calls with we have an audition for you. And then you look at what the audition is. And that's when the emotional stuff comes in about like, ew, what's this? Am I too good for this? Oh, don't they know who I think I am? That's really that's the ball of wax right there. Don't they know who I think I am?
I love that.
And because shouldn't they just offer this to me, or shouldn't they do this? Blah, 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 blah. And the reality is that I'm not living in Malibu, and they're not shipping scripts to me. And Sony doesn't have a 4-picture deal with me, and I'm not having lunch with directors in Beverly Hills saying like, well, what do you want to do for the next 4 or 5 years? And Patrick's booked for 30. I'm not that. If I am that, then we'll have those problems, but I'm not. So when the audition comes in, it really is, are you in or are you out? And I tell young actors this all the time. Are you in or are you out? And if you're out, for whatever reason that might be, your sensibilities are offended, you don't like what it is, you don't think it's correct politically, or it's a small part, or you don't want to have to audition for it, whatever those things are, we can talk about that with your therapist, we can talk about it with coffee with other actors when we're walking up Runyon Canyon, we can talk about that later. And it's all justified, fine. If you're out, you're out, that's great. But if you're in, then do your job. And if you're in, that means we no longer have any opinions about the material. We don't look down on the material, because now at this point you're going to be an actor, and your job is to go in and for 5 minutes show whoever these people are, either by your tape or in the room, that you know how to act. And this is your interpretation of the material given to you. Oh, they didn't give you the whole script? Okay, great. We can talk about that with our therapist too. They're not giving the script out. These are the parameters of what this particular audition is. Are you going to do it? Are you in or are you out? I'm in. So if this guy's in, then there's certain things that I do immediately. I figure out what I'm going to wear. I read as much as I can. I find out as much as I can about the project. And like, when I say the project, I mean the actual script. I also at this point find out who's directing and stuff like that, if I can get that information, if that's informative to me. But mostly I want to know, when do I have to audition? When does this need to be done? When do I need to act? And at that point, everything else fades by the wayside, and I work on that until I get ready to either put the audition on tape or show up. And that means memorizing your lines. That means doing your script work. That means doing the homework of your actor. That means not staying out late. That means getting sleep. That means making sure you're ready to go. That means making sure you have your lights, camera, and stuff ready these days. And it means stacking the deck in your favor to the best of the ability. So when somebody either views your audition or sees your audition, they go away with this. Oh, he knows what he's doing. He could do this job. Whether I do this job or not has always been out of my control, and it still is. And at that point, I'll be put in a pile of either he can do it or he can't. And if he can do it, then I'm in the mix. And hopefully I'm in the mix long enough until somebody says, like, I think it's him, right? The king in the room goes like, oh, I think it's Patrick. And everybody goes, yeah, it's Patrick. And then they call me, they say it's you. But as soon as I'm done with doing it, I'm done. That's it. Now I'm done. I put my thing out there. I've done my job, which is auditioning. And then I move on and wait for the next phone call, for the next thing to come. And we'll see what happens then. And hopefully we have scheduling problems and luxury problems, like, oh, 2 jobs want you. And oh, they want to pay you too much money. That's never happened. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for me, the times that I say no it's very minuscule. Very minuscule. There's been some things absolutely along the way where I'm like, I don't feel like doing that. That's a low budget film and it shoots in Louisiana and I don't like the script. The script is really bad. And I don't think I can do much with this, or stuff like that, maybe. Because I have different constraints now too, right? I'm married, I've got kids, I've got a family and stuff like that. And so there's a bit of consideration with that. But the biggest thing is, the biggest thing ultimately is, are you in or are you out? And if you're in, then I know exactly what to do. I get a yellow legal pad and I start writing down I do exactly what I've been doing for 30 years. I learned in school. I get ready to audition, and because I'm an actor, and I know how to audition.
And what's the process? Because surprisingly, in 200 podcasts, I've never actually asked how someone remembers their lines.
Well, it's different for everybody. Everybody has a different thing.
Yeah, and
for
I always
me,
find
this is
that unique.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's really unique because you could get an audition within 2 days or 1 day or whatever, and then you practice it, and then you have to wake up first thing in the morning, and now you have to somehow still remember everything and then go and do your lines. I've always found that very interesting, and also mentally to be able to just flick the switch and go?
Well, some days it's easier than others, obviously. And also, it's a muscle I've been working on for 30 years, my short-term memory, my ability to dump something in and play believably for a couple of minutes and then, bail out on it. And some days it's easier than others. Some days the dogs are barking while you're trying to do the audition. Some days you really don't you don't need your wife's opinion about your performance. You know what I mean? And, all that stuff. And that's all just ego and sense of, don't you know who I think I am? And, but for me, practically speaking, a yellow legal pad and a ballpoint pen has been my friend. I did this all throughout Saul as well. I would take my scenes and I would write them out longhand. I would write out my lines, other people's lines. I would start to circle ideas. Now you can do it on an iPad now with, the pen and all that stuff and highlight and all that stuff. And I certainly will use that. But when it comes to actually like memorizing stuff, that's the best way. The best way is to have it in your brain, looking it next to it, and then writing it down. Because then it starts to imprint in my brain a little bit more. I start to get a sense of being with the words. What am I saying? Oh, that's what I'm saying. I'll also use the phone as a recording device to go ahead and record the lines, and I'll go for walks and I'll sort of think about that. But the work is putting time into it. Some people are memorize much easier than others. I'm pretty good at it. And I can be pretty word perfect as well, which is just a skill that you can actually work on and get better at. And so, that's the first order of business, because for me, for auditioning, even though I used to hold my sides in my hand, the pages in my hand when I'd audition, just in case I would blank so I could quickly look down and keep going. Nowadays, I want to get it top to bottom clean.
I'm jealous.
And that can take a while. That can take a while sometimes. Sometimes you can get, 75% through the thing, and then all of a sudden you go, and you forget and you stop and you got to start all over again. So keeping the emotional balance of trying to do that can be frankly exhausting.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just get wiped out. You're like, screw it. I can't get it. Or the doorbell rings, or you just forget your line So, but guess what? Those are the parameters of trying to audition now. This is what the world is. You can rail against it, and if you can work outside of that system, congratulations, good for you. You should. But I'm not in that position, so I will do the best I can, given what I got.
It sounds very overwhelming for me to try and remember lines, but I'm sure after 30 years you've got an amazing system. You also mentioned in terms of this new age bracket. Now that you've hit a certain age number, how does that feel? Because you've been in a certain category for a certain amount of years, and now you're forced to change whether you like it or not and play in another arena. How do you?
Well, I think all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm not being paired up inappropriately with 20-year-old girls anymore. Oh, okay, I'm now that guy, and that's okay. I tell you what, I got to do a film with Andie MacDowell about 2 years ago.
Nice.
Called the Other Zoe. It hasn't even been released yet. It's gonna I don't know where it's gonna be released, but I got to spend some time in North Carolina with her, and her and I were the husband and wife. We got to canoodle around and hang out with one another. And I was like, oh, this is nice. I like this category. All the young people had, young people problems. And Andie and I just had like really cool, beautiful clothing. We were photographed really nicely. And I got to be Andie MacDowell's husband. I'm sorry. That's a good job. That's totally fun. And, nobody wants to, doesn't matter what job you're in or part of your life, nobody wants to all of a sudden realize that you're listening to the classic rock station. And, but that's okay, because guess what? Everybody in all the stories that get told, they need fathers. They need fathers. They need grandfathers. They need senators. They need presidents.
Ooh,
and that's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I remember watching Bill, what's his name? President from Independence Day. Not Bill Paxton, who I worked with.
It's on
Bill Pullman. Bill Pullman and Bruce Greenwood have exactly where I would like to get.
Yeah.
They're always sort of like in these cool things, playing like the head of state or the president or the head of the FBI or the money guy. And I was like, oh, yeah. I thought about this years ago. I mean, I'd love to be able to play those roles. Of course, they're still playing those roles because he's Bill Pullman and he's Bruce Greenwood. Yes. And you go like, oh, how do I fit in there? And I'm like, oh, well, you'll find those types of projects that are maybe a couple of shelves down because Bill Pullman's not going to do that anymore. And maybe I can be the president in that lower budget thing. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And so there's plenty of stuff still out there. There really is. And,
Great.
you know, I mean, the great gift of like this last administration in America as well is like, I can play Kevin. I can't wait to try and audition to play Kevin McCarthy because, you know, that's coming down the pike. And if you want to look at it foreign wise, I can be in foreign films because let's face it, all these stupid white American politicians look the same. I can play Joe Biden. I can play Trump. I can be the evil representation of America writ large, either corporate or political, in all of these films, and I would be happy. Send me to Italy. I'll be the best thing, and I'll learn a couple of words of Italian or Mandarin or Spanish or whatever. You know, that'd be
a lot of
totally fun.
Yeah, it would
right?
be. Wow. Yeah, it's amazing how like playing a role that you won't resonate with in real life, but then when you actually get to play the character on TV or movies, how much fun it can be to explore that side. Because we've all got light and dark within us. Yeah, we've all got the shadow aspect within us, and being able to explore it in a safe way, like acting, can be a lot of fun as well. And also, not that this is the goal, but it's almost like therapy at some level because you're exploring a deeper part of yourself as well. Do you ever think of it that way, or is it, oh, I got to play the character? I know that it wouldn't be the number 1 to 5, but you get to explore yourself.
Yeah, no, I like the exploring myself, and I love that you get licensed to do things you probably wouldn't be able to do in civilization, you know, or at least me, Patrick Fabian, the way I conduct myself in the world, you wouldn't be able to do certain things, and so that's fun. But the truth is, given who I am, what I look like, the career that I've had in those sort of parameters, I've had a hallway that's pretty wide, but not as wide as like a character person, somebody who like, I haven't played the serial killer yet. I haven't played the guy who's like completely addicted to drugs or, in a shitty, awful relationship. I haven't done a whole bunch of that stuff as of this point. I may. That would be fun, and I would love to get back on stage and do stuff as well because that was really a great time. But I also don't think of. I think of therapy as therapy, and that my work is my work.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to work out. I'm a little shallow. I'm not working on any demons on screen. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's it's nothing worse than seeing someone really battle themselves in front of 100 cast members. But I just mean from the fun aspect. Also, we've spoken about this a lot in the disappointments in the industry, the rejections, the no's, the most famous word in the industry. You glossed over that you've been in 13 pilots that never went to air, which, each time you're probably thinking, oh, this is the one. This is the one. And I'd love to know how that's impacted your motivation levels, because it would be, oh, I'm on this pilot and you're at the very peak of the graph and then it doesn't get made and you drop to the bottom. And so part of this journey, this acting journey, creative journey, is obviously being able to keep ourselves accountable. You've mentioned ego. I'm just very curious of how you've managed your motivation levels.
Yeah. Oh, well, it hurts. I mean, to your point, you're at the highest of highs. You're on stage in a sitcom, and there's an audience, and they're laughing. Granted, they've been probably paid to come laugh, but they're laughing, and all of a sudden you can feel it though too. Like you're doing something, and you can feel it. I was on. I got to guest star on Friends, and I got to guest star on Will and Grace. I think within the same year or two.
Oh, nice.
And they were functioning at the height of their powers. The writing was great. They could do no wrong. The audience adored them, worshiped them. And when mistakes were made, the audience felt like they were in on it. It was so exciting, so electric. People just really operating at the height of their game. And I was so privileged and happy to be a part of that. And sometimes when you would shoot a pilot, you'd feel like you were starting to get that kind of magic, like a live house. Or you're like, whoa, this is good. Or you shoot even a pilot that's not live. And you're just like, you know what? This is good. This is good. I've been in shit. This is good. And it wouldn't necessarily matter if it was good, because the people making the decisions, who were running networks, who were programming, have possibly different concerns and different, again, on the other side of the table, they're glad it's good. Oh, good. They made a good pilot. It doesn't really fit. I don't know if we have any spaces for that. What are we going to do with this good pilot? Because that's not what we're doing right now. We've talked about what we're doing, and we need this, this, and this, and you're that. And then a lot of the perception is like, so they're not going to pick that. We're going with this.
Yeah.
But now that they've not picked you, well, then you have the stench of like, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that project that they didn't pick it? Right? And so then they try and sell it somewhere else. And they're like, well, they didn't want to date you. Why should we date you? And there's stories about that all over town, right? So you do a pilot, you're like, oh, that didn't work. He didn't fail because they used to, years ago, they used to shoot a whole lot of pilots. I somewhere up of like 120, maybe 130 pilots, but there was still only like 15 or 20 slots available. Yeah. But there was a proliferation of them. So you got a sense of like every year you could get a pilot, and then you're on the craps table. Maybe you're going to win. And a pilot would pay you a little bit more money than usual. And so that would be enough to sort of float you for a while, even if it didn't go. And I mean, I ended up guest starring on almost all the pilots that I never got, right? They would go, and I'm like, oh, and then eventually I guest star on them, which was fun too. But you roll back from that by feeling really bad. I mean, it's about going like, oh, my dreams didn't come true. Oh, now I'm going to go guest star on somebody else's pilot. Oh, okay. And you feel bad. But then you hope for the phone to ring, and it becomes cyclical again. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to get new headshots. Okay. There's all that busy work, but it's work that needs to be done. It's minutia. It's very self-reflective. And then you're going to write a play with a friend. You're going to keep yourself busy as an artist in the downtime. And that's part of being an artist, not letting it just lay fallow and not just being, waiting to see what happens.
Keeping the creative juice alive. I've written quite a few screenplays, and we've talked about the ups and the downs, for example. And I know I've mentioned this a few times, but that many no's, that much like rejection, getting to the top and then dropping, it can really impact one's motivational levels. I know that you've had an amazing kind of like mindset to keep on going, but I'm also like curious what has kept you going the entire time, because not many humans can handle that. And that's also why you're in that small bracket of being able to do this for 30 years.
Well, when you say it like that, I'm like, who's that guy? That happens to be me. But I'm also I'm also in a town and hanging around with people who are doing the same thing.
Yep.
Who are also hanging out and trying to do it. So, there are people I can commiserate with, who can understand. I've got friends from 30 and 40 years who I can I just call up to tell them the latest Hollywood tell. You'll never guess what happened to me today. And my friend, he'll go, it's like, it's an absurd business. It's crazy. Bye. That sort of thing. And you sort of revel in your ups and your downs with people. Also, it's the only thing I've ever wanted to do. And I've been fortunate enough to keep doing it long enough that I haven't had to pause to go like, wow, I haven't worked in 5 years. Maybe I've been retired and I don't know it. Maybe I need to do something else. I've been fortunate enough I haven't run across that yet. Yeah. But that's what happens eventually.
Not for you. Not for you.
Well, eventually you look around, you go, oh, I'm not working. I haven't worked. I hope it doesn't happen to me. I plan it on not happening to me because, there's always something around the corner. And I still haven't played the president, so there's lots of things out there.
Soon. We're putting that out there. That'll be your next job. I also...
Yeah. And by the way, can we, first of all, congratulations on being writing screenplays. There is nothing, I'll underline it one more time. There is nothing worse than having to be a writer. Nothing. The loneliness, the sitting in front of the screen, the writing it, the sending it out, hoping somebody's actually going to read it. Oh my God, I would never in a million years be a screenwriter. That's why I admire writing so much. The writing that I get to do is good. I can't believe that it got through. I can't believe they spent the time to hone it. My God, I have no discipline to sit down and write.
Thank you.
And anybody who does, my hat is off to them. Nobody knows, right? Nobody knows how lonely it is. Anybody who I talk to who's a writer and writes for a living always quickly gets to the point of like, oh yeah, it's a terrible job. I can't help it. I have to, but it's terrible.
That's I appreciate that. The goal for me is to be in writer's room so I can collaborate with people. That's what keeps me going, but doing it in isolation. The goal is to make it as good as possible, where you have a little bit more inverted commas power or say, so that you can get a good team around you so you can actually talk and discuss. But the actual aspect of writing by oneself and the highs and lows, getting people to read it, like just recently, I've done the work, I'm completely fine. For like 4 months, I was in contract negotiation with a production company and can't get into too much. I was like, finally, I'm going to get my big break with this script. I'm going to be the creator of this show. And then there was just like red flag after red flag and 4 months, lot of lawyer fees. And we're like, oh no, this isn't going to go ahead with them. And you're like, back on the horse. So I resonate with the actor journey.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard. You put something out there, all they do is everyone's all of a sudden a critic, aren't they?
Yep. The actual content is great. It was just perhaps not a great match in terms of people. I'll just leave it at that. I feel very confident on the script, and that's going to go ahead, and we'll get it made, and we'll see what happens there.
And let me know if there's the role of the president. I'd be more than happy to work for you for scale.
We don't have one, but we can just have the president for no reason.
Just throw him in.
Whatever lines you want as well, you can just say, like, oh, that was weird, and then just continue with the rest of the A story.
Oh my god,
that'd be great. Well, actually, on that, we're talking about like disappointment and failures, and even like shows that don't go ahead. And I found this quote of yours, which I love, and I've been reading it 100 times. And this is your quote: "You're supposed to have disappointments. You're supposed to fail. Things are supposed to not work out." Please tell me about your genius there. How did you come to that realization?
Wow. When did I say that? I don't even know. Good for me. Good for me. Well, I mean, again, talking about false expectations. What did you think was going to happen? Did you really think the first thing you were going to do was going to do this, that they've been waiting for you? That all of a sudden you're going to become this thing out of nowhere? I mean, no. And also, what good would that be if everything worked out? So you're supposed to fail because, one, that's going to make you better. And it just is, because it's going to make you know who you are more, who you are as an artist, and how you deal with that failure. And I say fail, that's small quotes around that. You're just not going to get what you want in the way that you want it. And part of it is figuring out to take what you get. I mean, it's that whole thing of like, if you're not happy with what you have, if you're not happy with what you have now, you're never going to be happy with what you get. There's a degree of you've got to be okay with what's going on. Doesn't mean you don't have ambition. Doesn't mean you don't want to go somewhere else. But to realize that 1,000 stories have been told about like, and then I'm going to get this, and then I'll be happy.
You have to
come on
now.
Yeah. So it's got to be the journey. It's got to be it's got to be in the doing. It's got to be in the present. Because if it's just cash and prizes, you're in the wrong business, I think. Because you got in this to become rich and famous, it's a minuscule possibility. And the richness part, it can happen, but you better be a content creator instead. And so all of that sort of misguided, at least I think misguided stuff. So you're in it for the journey of the thing and that. And the failure does make you better. The failure makes you more resilient. The failure allows you to go ahead and say, I'll show you. You were wrong about me. I'm good for this role, or I'm good for another role, or you'll see me later on. And, I was telling the story about going in for, I was going in for a show and I didn't want to go in for it. I was like, why am I going in for it? And actually, I'll tell the story real quick.
Is it the dog with the blog?
No. I got an audition for Lucifer. And I didn't know Lucifer at all from here or there. But for whatever reason, I was feeling at the moment, like, can't they just offer this to me? Don't you know who I think I am? And the answer was, you can do that. You can say offer only. That's not worked for me. It's never worked for me. I think I've done it maybe twice to say like offer only. I didn't get the job. Who the hell do I think I am? I mean, honest to God. And so, so I go in, I put my acting suit on, and I learn all these lines and stuff like that. And I go over. And this is when you still went back into offices, and I went to the office, and there was a room full of me. But it was a room full of guys who I didn't know really. And so then I started doing this whole thing in my brain of going like, oh, Oh, all my usual gang, they said offer only, right? They didn't come into audition. I mean, I went to this whole bad spot. And so I knew enough to know that that wasn't going to help me.
Yeah.
So I removed myself from that room and I walked down the hall. I walked outside and I did sort of the idea, are you in? Are you out again? Because clearly I'd started putting myself out.
Nice.
And I'm like, okay, I'm in. Okay, I'm here. I got my acting suit on. So what do I do? But I got into the script. I worked on my lines again and I worked on what my things were and I wanted to make sure I was really solid. And I finally go into the room. So I go into the room and there behind the camera is a producer who's like, oh, hi, Patrick. I'm so glad you decided to come in. It was a director who I had worked with on another show called Grimm. And I believe at the time, maybe it was her first directing gig. I don't know. I don't remember. I just remember we had a good time working on Grimm up in Portland, as a matter of fact. And I had cosmetic stuff. I had a lot of prosthetics on it. And so it was a kind of a difficult shoot. But we had a good time and it was fun. She goes, oh, I'm so glad to see you. I'm glad you came in. And at that moment, I thought two things. One, I'm glad I said yes to coming into the audition. And two, I was glad I was memorized. I was glad I had done my homework and I didn't come in half-assed. Because then she said, oh, I'm looking forward to see what you do. And I didn't have to get nervous about like, oh shit, I don't have anything prepared, because I was prepared. I had said I'm in and I did my work. Anyways, so I do it and I get the job. Well, isn't that fun? It's great. I got the job. Yay. Well, now all of a sudden, all those thoughts about like, oh, why am I here? And, other guys didn't come. Blah, blah, blah. That sucks. Guess what? I'm going to Vancouver. I'm going to work on Lucifer. Sounds great. So I get up there and I'm working on a scene and I meet Tom Ellis, who plays Lucifer, of course. And for those of you watching at home, Tom Ellis is even more handsome and more charming up close, if that's even possible. But it's the truth. One of the nicest guys I've ever met in my business, just wonderful and shouldered quite a lot. I mean, he's Lucifer and Lucifer. So anyways, we're standing there and I just come off of doing a scene and he takes time out. This is the first time I've really met him. And he goes, hey, thanks for doing the show. We're so excited that you're here. Thank you so much for coming. And I was like, oh, isn't that great? Isn't that great? He's giving me a little sunshine up my skirt. I'll take it. Thank you. Blah, blah, blah. And then a producer comes over and he comes over and he goes, oh my God. And Tom says, I was just telling Patrick how lucky we are to get him. Well, isn't that, I'm feeling great. And the producer says, oh, I know. It's so great. He said, you know what? We were just going through our list of, offer onlys and, people we were going out to. And then all of a sudden, I think her name was Ellen. She comes in with the tape and she goes, hey, you got to see this guy. You got to see this guy on tape who I just saw, because I think he's the role. We watched the tape and we're like, oh yeah, that's great. Let's hire him. So way to go. And he passed me on the back and the producer walks away. This is why I love Tom Ellis. And Tom Ellis turns to me and he goes, I know the only thing you heard was that you were not on the offer only list. And we fell out laughing. I was like, you're exactly right. I got the job. I'm there. And the only thing I can think of is like, I'm not on the offer only list for this. What? After all these years? And it's not because it's Lucifer. It's just because, wait, I'm not in the conversation, which, by the way, there's hundreds of me. Thousands of me out here. So the thought that I think that I'm going to be on the list or should be on the list is out of whack with reality. But it was another reminder of like, oh, well, how do I get a job? How does this guy get a job? This guy auditions. This guy auditions and he gets a job because that gives me a chance. The people who picked up the phone on my behalf did that so somebody else could pick up the phone and say like, yes, we'll give him a chance. And the chance was put on your acting clothes, learn your lines and show up. And I did. And in that instance, I got the job. Was it because I had worked with her before? I don't know. Was it because I was the best auditioner? I don't know. Because I never know what happens on the other side of the table. But I know I got called from wardrobe saying, what are your sizes? And then I knew I had a job. And then I got to go up and meet Tom, have a wonderful time. The producer says that. And he's trying to give a compliment. He's trying to tell me how cool it was. And Tom and I know, oh no, we're such broken actors. We're just, all we heard is that we weren't on the list.
Well, there's also a really awesome stories that you controlled what you could control. You knew your lines, you changed your mindset, you actually went. Those are the things you can control. And you obviously did good job on Grimm where they remembered you, whether it got you the job or not, that still helped and it carried forward, which is really awesome. Within that as well, you've had a lot of these moments where, you've kind of changed your mentality for the positive. And I heard this story. I think there was like a 2-week period that almost changed your life with the dog with the blog, if that's what
Yeah.
I'd love to hear this story because this is a kind of crazy 2 weeks. I'll just preface it and then you obviously tell your story. But a few things that really resonated with me is that I think you said you weren't getting that many auditions at that period, and there were a bunch of negative thoughts coming through. We're all human, we all go through them. And then in this 2.5 weeks, 2 week period, you completely changed your mentality, and then a wonderful opportunity came your way. I'd love to hear a bit about that story.
Well, I found myself on the wrong side of 50 in the entertainment business, as they say. And I was married with 2 kids and I had a mortgage, first house I'd ever bought. And I'm staring at the ceiling and the phone is not ringing. And I am not getting auditions. And all of a sudden I realize, maybe maybe I'm going to be subjected to all the usual things that people over 50 are subjected to. And I was getting panicked. And then I got an audition. Yay, I got an audition. And my manager called, and it was for an ABC family show called Dog with a Blog. Very fun show. The dog, I believe, was #1 on the call sheet. And I knew the people who played the parents on the show, and it's ABC Family. But at the time, I was feeling like, wow, ABC Family is the job I'm being offered. This is it. And I was starting to feel badly about myself, my representation, about the industry, about everything. And then finally, I was just like, well, it seems to be what's out there. So I deigned to put on my acting suit and learn the lines. And I drive down there and I walk into the room, and there's like 20 of me, all in their acting suits. And all of a sudden it hit me because the guy looked up and down and I'm like, these guys have all worked. We've all worked. And then I realized, oh, this is what's available to all of us who didn't become movie stars. This is what the job is right now. And I got cold and I felt sad for all of us and everything else. And it's only because you thought you were going to be somewhere else, right? You were going to be on the Friends. You were going to be, George Clooney. And instead you're with 20 other guys who also have mortgages and kids who didn't become those guys. Anyways, I go into the room to audition and I walk in and the producers are younger. And I believe is her name Elena Goldberg? I'm not sure, but the wonderful casting director who, by the way, called me in to give me an opportunity for a job is sitting there, and she's working. And she says to me, all right, in the script, when you're talking to the camera, you'll be talking to this. And she points at the camera. And I remember because I think, well, I know what a camera is. Did you have to point to it for me? And then she says, and when you're talking to the dog, you'll be talking to me. And all of a sudden I felt badly for her. I felt badly for me that we found ourselves as adults in this situation. And I thought I could leave. I thought I could leave. I could probably leave right now. It would be professionally unprofessional. And I would have to apologize later to the casting director and to my agents and managers. But if I don't really want to be here and I feel like there's a shame or something, whatever it was I was feeling, I'm like, I can leave. And then I thought, no, you have your acting suit on. You came down here, do your thing. And I start doing the first couple of lines of the episode of the scene. And the producers laugh. They laugh. And like a drug addict, I am like, what? They like me. So I do the thing. Everybody laughs. It's a really good time. Guess what? It's a really funny audition, and it's a really cute part. And Elena thanks me. The producers thank me. I walk out of the room, and it's one of those thin-walled places. So I was one of the first to go, and all my other friends who were there sort of give me the stink eye, like, because we were having a good old time in that point. I get in the car. I drive back. I call my manager. I said, I might get a pin me in for this, because I think I did really well. I never call them for the stuff like that. Never.
Oh,
and then and on the way home, I was just thinking, you know what? This was a really fun show. My kids can watch it. It pays American money, and my rent takes American money, which is convenient. So this is great. Maybe as a matter of fact, they'll write me into a couple more episodes. Now I'm making myself a recurring on a show, and I'm really excited. And I go home. I'm like, this will be really fun. I really knocked that out of the park. Good for me. Yay, me. Yay. And then I don't hear anything for days, for like 4 or 5 days. And then I call my manager. By the way, I have never in 30 years called my manager about a job to be like, hey, what happened to that job? And then he goes, oh, right, I forgot to call you and tell you they got you the job. So I call him and he goes, I forgot about that. I'll check on that. He calls me back about 30 seconds later and he goes, they offered it to a name of your name, but don't worry, we'll find something else. And he hangs up. And I go in my brain, a name of your name? for Dog with the Blog, there was 20 of us in the room there who have resumes that are 20 years deep. What do you mean? You offered it to somebody else? And I was just tripping on that. I was like, oh my God. And then about a week later, I get an audition for a show called Better Call Saul, which is the prequel to Breaking Bad. And I look at that, and there's 3 pages of sides. And I'm like, what? 3 pages of sides? That's it? Barely a character description. And I come downstairs and I say to my wife, what am I supposed to do with this? They don't even give me a script. It's 3 pages. It's like being on a merry-go-round and there's a target 50 yards away and they give you a dart and you're supposed to throw it. And I'm railing and acting like an asshole. And my wife just goes, well, isn't that good? You could just make up, whatever you want. I don't want to hear that. So I'm bitching, right? And also, so I'm like, what am I going to do? And I'm like, well, if they're getting a name of your name for Dog with the Blog, guess what? They're getting a movie star for the prequel for Breaking Bad. There's no way I'm getting this job. But the casting office is Bayali Thomas, Sharon Bayali and Sherry Thomas. And I haven't seen them in a couple of years. And casting, like I said, has been giving my career. So I'm like, well, they cast The Walking Dead. So that's probably in its 3rd or 4th season. So if I'm lucky and I do good on this Better Call Saul audition, maybe I'll get a 3-episode arc on The Walking Dead and get eaten by a zombie. That was my goal.
That's the goal.
So I go in and I put my acting suit on. I'm in for the audition. I did my work. I show up and I read with Sherry Thomas, and she has an iPhone, and it's just her. And we meet each other. We say hello to one another and have some chit chat. And then she sits down and she says, okay, these guys, they like it really natural. They like it real. And I was like, great, got it. Perfect. Woohoo. We sit down and we start the audition, and you would have thought I was in a Greek drama. I am projecting to the back of the camera, out the wall, to the parking lot. And after 25 years of auditioning, all I have to do is stop like an adult human being and say, you know what, that's kind of off base. I should probably, but I can't because I'm a moron and I'm on a moron train and I cannot stop. And I keep going louder and bigger and doing this thing. And I finish, and God bless her, she looks at me and she goes, okay, well, we have that. They like it real. Let's do another. And at that point, my lizard brain of acting realizes you did not take the note. You did not listen to her. And then the other part of me just goes like, you've just blown it getting on The Walking Dead. You're not going to get eaten by a zombie.
Not even the Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul.
I'll forget that. That was never going to be mine anyways. And so I just sort of give up, and I'm disappointed. And then I let go, and then I just do what you're supposed to do, which is talk and listen. But I've been talking and listening with other people's words for 25 years, and I've been trained. I went to a school, and I've been working. So I do kind of know what I'm doing. And so in fallback mode, there is something there. I wasn't just talking. I was talking with intention. I was using the script and everything else, but I wasn't trying to be an Aristophanes, the frogs or something. And I finish and we shake hands, we say goodbye. And I drive on the way home and I go, you know what? I bucked myself up. Maybe that was good enough to get me into The Walking Dead. That wasn't so bad, talking to the steering wheel that we all do. And I go home and I forget about it. That's dead. And 2 weeks later, I get a call saying that Vince Gilligan, who created Breaking Bad, of course, saw my tape and they wanted to test me for the role. Wow. And I was like, what? In my brain, I was like, well, that's it in a nutshell, isn't it? In a 2-week period, I went in, put on my acting suit, did my thing. I was not the answer across the table for Dog with the Blog. And let me tell you, I didn't become a better actor all of a sudden in 2 weeks. I didn't become a different actor. But I said I was in, I did my audition, and I went. And this time, across the table, I was the answer. And, no offense to Dog with a Blog, I'm glad it cut the way it cut.
Yeah.
But for me, the entirety of my career is that, for me. And if I take either of them too seriously, the rejection or the success, I'm dead. I'm dead. Because really, it is the showing up and doing the rest of it was out of my hands. I will take advantage of both of those things. I don't get the job, I'm going to try and retrench and da. I get the job, well, let's go and do the best we can on that thing. But that's the career in the arts for me, in my perspective. I got lucky. I was ready for the luck, but I got lucky 25 years into it.
It's so wild to hear where, you're banking on this one job that you would have taken, but you weren't in love with. And then, we go through the normal human negative mind games and we question ourselves. And then somehow the universe kind of provides in some sense. And then you get this life-changing experience. And,
crazy.
It's like a scale where it just gets kind of evened out.
And I tell you what, because of that evening out of that also, I thoroughly enjoyed each and every minute of working on Better Call Saul. I took advantage of everything I could to be on that thing and to have fun and to utilize it and use it because I knew that doesn't come around very often. And I knew that I was fortunate and I didn't want to waste it. I wanted to soak it all up.
That's so rare. It can be very easy. We've talked about the highs and lows of the industry where we come from fear of when's the next job, or you're probably thinking, am I going to get another arc? Am I going to be on the next season? Am I going to get lines? And it can be very easy not to be grounded and enjoy the process because, as an actor, it can be taken away. That's probably not the best way of saying it, but the mentality of it can be taken away like that. And to actually enjoy a massive hit and stay in the moment, that's what it's all about. And, you've been preaching in a positive way. It's all about the journey. And I think that's a great lesson that we can all take. Everyone can take because, we're always worried about what's next. But to actually enjoy it in the moment means we can enjoy things later on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, is Eckhart Tolle, the power of now, all that sort of thing. I believe Buddhism has been talking about it for a couple of thousand years, but there is a degree of every day I wake up, I'm like, oh, I'm awake again? Great. Oh, I'm alive? Fantastic. What's next? I mean, look, the universe or God, whatever you believe, they took John Lennon at 40. They took David Bowie as well. They're going to take me. So it's that notion of like, what am I going to do with today? I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy the here and now. I'm going to enjoy the dog walk. No, I'm not in the south of France at the Cannes Film Festival. No, but I'm walking my dogs today. So I'm going to do that. What can I do to further what I think it is that I want today with my career, with my wife, with my kids and everything else. And that fills your day. And there you are. Then you go to bed. Then you wake up the next day. And you're like, oh, I get to be awake again today? Great. Thanks. That's cool. What are we going to do today? And it doesn't mean I'm pie-eyed or Pollyannish about like wanting to have ambition and have things happen. And it's not like bad things don't happen. They do. But I think it's trying to right size yourself into the idea of like, what does that mean? What does it all mean? I don't know. It's pretty fun and pretty rare that I get to work on TV the way I get to work on it. And I'm very grateful. And if it never happens again, oh my God, please no. But if it doesn't, what a ride. What a great time. I got nothing to complain about. Nothing.
Oh, okay. We're going to have to do part 2, part 3, part 10. This is me. I love your mentality. What we're going to do before we say goodbye is a very quick 3-question rapid fire segment. So the first thing that springs to mind, but if you need time to think about it, that's all good. Any advice you want to give to people who want to try something different or new, but perhaps a bit fearful of doing so?
Oh, say yes. Say yes to life. Say yes to the possibility. I mean, I always like to say, like, what's the worst case possibility that happens? You fail, you fall on your face, it doesn't work out. That's okay. You're not expected to make everything work out, but you may say yes to something and it may open a door into a way of being and a perception of yourself that you never thought was possible.
I'm not going to comment because I'll derail them, but that was awesome. If you could go back into a time when you were first starting out, what advice would you give yourself and why?
Oh, I'd stop wasting so much time being angry at other people's success. Other people's success does not take away from yours. It only enhances. Oh my God. Stop comparing yourself. All comparison leads to sorrow.
Can you expand on only enhances? Other people's success only enhances you. That's very interesting.
Oh, I think it blazes a trail. Oh, they got that thing. Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. I'm going to be positive about them getting it because one, on a practical level, it takes them off the market. I can go get another job that they can't go for. Right? That's
Yeah.
the truth.
Love
He
it.
booked that. Good. He's out of the way. But also because it's just the idea of that positive energy of being happy for them. Then hopefully someone will be happy for you as things go for you, because this mentality eats your soul, eats your heart, eats your guts. And eventually you walk into an audition and all they see is your anger. Who wants to hire an angry person?
True, and it also leads to which you have, and you've obviously gone through, which we'll talk about another time, but you've got this abundance mindset where if someone else is thriving, then you're thriving in a sense. And I think that's also really awesome and rare. Last question before I ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you. What is the one question I should have asked you?
Oh, what my favorite band is. And I would have answered Rush, the Canadian power trio, of course.
How did you find them?
I found them out of Brian. What was Brian's last name? Doesn't matter. He had a yellow Datsun B210 in the parking lot of Cedar Cliff High School around 1982. And I came out of the band room. Brian was smoking a cigarette, and he had speakers in the car doors that he had open. And I walked out, and there was this sound coming out. And I said, "What is that?" He said, "That's your new favorite band. That's the Spirit of Radio by Rush." And he was right.
That's so great. And I know that, you mentioned off air to me, you play piano, trombone, guitar, and you've been playing for a while, which is really awesome. Before we go, how can people follow you, keep up to date with you, and all of that cool stuff?
Well, when I do it, I try to be good about it. Twitter, at Patrick Fabian, and Instagram, Mr. Patrick Fabian. I don't do Facebook, and I'm not on TikTok. So if I am, it's not me.
I'll also upload the Cameo link if that's still active as well.
Yes, absolutely. You can find me at Cameo. Find me at Cameo. I'd love to sing you happy birthday. Absolutely. And show you the wonderful waterfalls when I hike.
That's awesome. Those will be in the episode notes below. Thank you so much. I love you've got a very rare, unique mindset in life, which is contagious and very empowering. So thank you so much for sharing it with me.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
We'll chat again sometime.
All right, brother. Take care.
Awesome.
Bye.
Not everything in life is going to be sunshine and rainbows. Patrick eloquently explains that if you're involved in something, i.e. a job, you either commit to it or you don't. Don't do it half-assed. Your job is to do the best that you can. Do yourself a service and commit if you want to achieve. Success is all about putting in the work and being committed. Because doing it half-heartedly will lead to half-hearted results. Success really comes down to who's most committed, most consistent, and most willing to do whatever it takes to be in it for the long haul. There can be no fair weather goal chasing in the level of success that you dream of playing at. You either devote yourself or you don't. Patrick is the perfect example of how putting in the work leads to great results, no matter how long it may take. So I'll leave you with this epic quote. Commitment is an act, not a word. Jean-Paul Sartre. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.